Hi, and it's Bonnie. We're back with our Block of the Month Club, and this month is block number 8. This is a particularly pretty block. I had never seen this pattern before, but it's called Eddystone Light. So again, it's got my stars in there that I like, and also it is supposed to resemble a lighthouse light, the crystal on a lighthouse, which also means security or home values. So that's the name of this block, Eddystone Light. If you go to the posted website, you can go into, and this company posted a series of 30 different squares. So the Eddystone Light will be one of the 30 squares that is available on the web link that I have provided. So click on that web link, go in, you'll see many, many delightful quilt blocks, and then just continue to scroll down. I think it's probably about block 15 out of the 30, but you will see the Eddystone Light. Go ahead and print that out so that you have the directions to go by. For this block, I used a mixture of lights, mediums, darks, and as you know, I am assembling an entire king-size quilt. So I have several different lights, I have several different mediums, several different darks. So I'm doing 3 blocks of each design. So I don't want every block to look exactly the same. So as I demonstrate today, you're going to see the same block, but in different color combinations. So remember, when you go to cut, use your rulers. The more accurately you cut and measure your block, the smoother your block will go together, and you'll be able to have it assemble much neater. And when you press it, it will be a lovely block that lays nice and flat. And that is the outcome of a block before you start to assemble the quilt. You want your block to lay nice and flat, and you can only do that by using accurate measuring and accurate pressing. These directions also give you not only the assembly out diagrams, but it also gives you the pressing diagrams, how to press the seams on your quilt. Now, I start out by pressing my seams on the back of the block first, and then I flip it over and I set the my duct tape let loose on my webcam, sorry. And then I set the block seams from the front, and that makes it nice and flat, and it will assemble well into your quilt. You will also see that I have continued to do my border pieces that I'm working on in between my quilt blocks, because I want to do that finished star in the center. So I am assembling my sashing strips in between the blocks as I go. I talked about that in a previous video, and I will talk about it again next month, because by this time you're starting to have enough blocks done that you might want to start assembling with your sashing. Now, to start out with, I again cut my blocks and I began to assemble my block. Some of these I have sewn together, some of these I have not, but I laid it out again on my large 12.5-inch block ruler, and I Scotch taped them, just a roll of Scotch tape to hold the blocks in place. And because, you know, it's not a firm kind of tape, they did roll down as I was holding it up. But if you're just leaving it flat on the table, you will have your your blocks or your pieces in place. Now, part of the reason that I always lay out a quilt block is that I want to sew once, assemble and sew once. So I lay everything out so that I can grab things up. When you are cutting your pieces, your directions tell you how many to cut of each color. And then you're going to lay your pieces out in little piles. Makes it much easier to find the piece you need when you start to assemble. So the first thing it's going to tell you to do is to assemble your flying geese pattern. Now you're going to want to be careful because here you'll have a 2.5 by 4.5 inch rectangle that you sew your corners to. And you notice that the point in this light section is the medium color, with the points of the star or the light being a light color. This group, and there's 4 of those, this group has the light center. So you'll do a 2.5 by 4.5 inch light center and then put the dark colors on the corner. So they're both flying geese. It's just you do the opposite quilt assembly coloring. Go by this instruction sheet. These are just like, and I know I've said this so many times, but these are the best step-by-step instructions. And if you have forgotten how to do a flying geese pattern, then here's a web link right up here that you can click on, and it will take you to a tutorial on how to do your flying geese. All through the patterns from this company, you're going to find links to help you out. Now, the flying goose is this, is this assembly that you take your 4.5 inch rectangle. In this one, it was the light, and this one, it's the dark. And then you take your let me double check, I don't want to say it wrong, your 2.5 inch squares. And when you cut your 2.5 inch square, you're going to have a diagonal line. You draw a diagonal line from the top to the bottom. This gives you a stitching line that you can stitch along. And here we see, here's the line. I have stitched along the line. Then I'm going to pull that square back and fold this square back. I'm going to line them up so I know they're nice and even. And then I will clip the extra part of the point away. I was working on a different quilt this morning, and instead of doing this assembly where you sew and then you cut, they actually had you cut all the little triangles separately and then sew them together. That's the old-fashioned way of doing it. This way you waste a little fabric by cutting those points away, and this is scrap, you just throw it away. But it is so much easier and so much more accurate if you do it this way than trying to cut all those mini triangles. It's also a miniature quilt. So, oh my, I said, this is a lot of work. This assembly is so much easier to do. And this is your flying goose. So you'll get all of your pieces done, and the pattern will tell you how many pieces, and it shows you you're going to need to have 4 units sewn in this color combination. In this color combination, you're going to have 8 units that you sewed. So now you have your units prepared. The next thing that you'll have 4 corners. And actually, because of the way I assembled my block, and let me put the camera down on my block. On this finished block I have, I did my 4 squares. They're 2.5-inch squares. And I did, so here's a 4.5 or 2.5-inch square. Here's a 2.5-inch square. The same thing, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5, 2.5. So I'll do my flying geese. I'm going to do 2 flying geese, sew them together, and that will make my sides. So by following that assembly unit, you're going to end up with 3 rows of constructed pieces. So you will have the bottom row, the middle row, which is very wide, and then the top row. And you notice I made sure that my points went out. It's supposed to be like a star radiating out, the light from a lighthouse radiating out from the crystals. So all of my points go out. You don't want to make a mistake and swing this around and have your points going one in, and one out. You won't have the same effect of a radiating light. So the first thing that I did, I cut my pieces. I assembled all the pieces that I needed to assemble in order to sew together my rows. So here are my rows sewn together. And the first strip would be this unit, 2 flying geese and 2 squares. You notice that I made it so my points are going out away from the quilt. So there is row 1 assembled. Row 2 is much larger because you assemble the center star and you take your flying geese with the corners, the squares in the corners, and you attach it to this large square in the middle. So this is like one large block, center block in the middle of your block. And then you put your flying geese with the points going out. Then my last row, let me move this down a little. My last row is the same as my first row, but I want to make sure that again, my geese are flying out so it looks like my star is radiating away. This, when it is finished, will be a 12.5-inch block. So on some of our other blocks, they were a finished 10.5-inch block, and then we had to add, say for an example, last month, here's block 7. Our center block, our finished block was 10.5, and then we had to add a border strip all the way around to add another inch. So it would come out a finished 12.5-inch block. But this one is 12.5 inches when it's done. So you don't have to add that additional sashing. Once I have this assembled, now this one's quite dark. I'm just fascinated by how each block looks so different just because of the colors that you choose. In this one, I chose all browns and lights, and this one I chose blues. So you can have so much fun just, designing your colors. Each block, even though it's the pattern, looks so much different. Here we've got the blue malte and then the brown malte, and this one is a brighter blue with the burgundy. Each one that you assemble, it looks so different just because of the colors that you choose. Now this, as if you have listened before, you know this is a piece that I found that I liked and that it coordinates with the other colors. It wasn't part of the original collection that I chose. This one was an additional add-on, and this bright blue was an additional add-on when I realized I needed another light and I needed another medium. So here's the same burgundy that has appeared in many, many of the other blocks and in my sashing. And then this blue, this is pretty bright. So I've used this sparingly. I don't want to overpower the quilt with this bright, bright color. I want it to blend in, but not take over. So I've been very careful how much of that medium blue that I use. But look how nicely it coordinates with the flowers in here. And here's our rusty red color, and here's our red color. So you can have so much fun just having your blocks have a total different look by the colors that you have chosen to put together. And so here's the brown, and I have a hard time just deciding which combination I like better, the blues or the browns. And I guess by taking and having, one of each, you don't have to decide, you just make one of each. And so here would be your sashing in between, and you would coordinate your blocks. Now remember, because I'm doing 3 blocks of each, I have 3 different rows started. And so this one was block 7, this is block 8. I have 3 different rows started, but because I have chosen 3 different color combinations for each block, they look totally different, and you wouldn't think they were rows of the same block. So remember, I've talked before about using a neutral color thread, and this taupey color thread is the color that I use so much in quilting. I'm not a beige person. My eye doesn't travel to that warm yellow beige color. My eye always travels to the taupe color, the grayed beiges, the grayed golds, always the taupey colors. That's what my eye goes to. And because my eye goes to those colors for selecting the colors for my quilt, I know that my thread is going to coordinate. If you were to sew with all dark thread, then between your light pieces, you're going to see dark thread stitching. By using the taupe color, you'll have the taupe in between the light and the dark, and they kind of just seem to blend together. It doesn't stand out too bad. Now, if I were to use white instead of taupe, I would definitely see those stitches in between the blocks. It would stand out against the beige, the creamy white, and it would stand out against the dark. So this light taupe color is a wonderful color to use as a neutral color of thread. So tonight at the library, not tonight, excuse me, this is Monday. Tomorrow night at the library, which will be May the 11th, you can stop by if you need any help. I'll be glad to go over the directions with you, or I'll be glad to completely start over and help you with putting your colors together and putting your pieces together so you know how to assemble your quilt. And we can have a lot of fun. But if you just need to drop in and say, oh, this really confuses me how to make these flying geese squares, or I'm very confused about how to assemble that center section, don't be afraid to stop by, and we'll lay your colors out right there in the library. And then you'll have a chance to ask questions and to clarify any problems you may be having. So this was block 8. We'll be together for block 9 at the next time. Your pattern will be posted later today or tomorrow so that you can go in, you can download your pattern and start cutting your squares. So have a great day. It's a pretty Monday after a rainy weekend. So enjoy your day, and I'll see you next month.